Hello everyone, welcome back to the new video. So in this video we are going to learn about the GraphQL. So if you are working on any application where the REST API is being used and you are trying to look for any performance improvement in terms of the latency and the bandwidth, then the GraphQL could be the useful for you. So GraphQL is a query language and QL in the GraphQL stands for the query language. So it is a query language to ask for the data either from any data source, either it could be the database or the REST API. So GraphQL is an alternative to the REST API and is a new way to ask for the data. It has been developed by the Facebook in the year 2015. So as you can see in this image, what happens in the REST API, our endpoint is being given to us. So we hit to the particular endpoint from where we could get the data in the form of the JSON. So if we are asked for the first name and the last name, but the REST API is designed in the way that it could provide us all the parameters even if we have not asked for. We are given with the other parameters also. So this is how the REST API works. But in case of the GraphQL, it is being designed in the way so that actually first of all the GraphQL is just a query language. So we need to ask for the data that what we are require. So if we require only the first name and the last name, then the GraphQL server will going to send us only the first name and the last name. It's just like we are asking the GraphQL server, hey, that we needs only the first name and the last name. So it is going to send us the data what we are required for. So it is kind of shifting the business logic from the server to the client side, and it is giving the authority to the client. We could have any heavy API which is sending us the lot of parameters, but we are using only the sum of the parameters. So in case of the GraphQL, it is reducing the latency in terms. If REST API is sending us the JSON which has the lot of parameters, it is sending the client a big size of the JSON file. Still the client has to go through that particular JSON to try to process the data and filter out what data that actually the client needs. But in case of the GraphQL will exactly send us the data what the client needs, and it is going to show us to the user. So this is how it is avoiding the most of the fields where the client needs to use only some of the fields from the response data. How it is reducing bandwidth, because it is sending the data what exactly the client needs. So what we are doing here is that we are doing client driven architecture rather than the server driven architecture. The response is limited depend upon the want the client request, and this is how the GraphQL works. So another big advantage in case of the GraphQL is you can see in this particular image. Suppose we have the three different endpoints and we need the data from all these three endpoints. So in case of the REST, we need to make the request one by one to each of these endpoints. In case of the post, comments and authors. But in the GraphQL, we have the single endpoint and we can put which API that we need to use in the GraphQL syntax, and we have the single request in that case, which combine all the APIs in the single request, and it gives us the single JSON response. So this is the major advantage of the GraphQL, which is helpful in reducing the latency. In case of the REST API, if we are making the each separate call to each of the API, then we are getting the three JSON responses, and we need to process all these JSONs in the client side, which will require more time as compared to the GraphQL, in which we get the single JSON response in a very productive manner, and we can directly show it to the user. So this we can say that it is now avoiding the underfetching of the data. So in case of the REST, one API might not be suitable to get all the data that the client needs, but in case of the GraphQL, we could all combine all the requests, all the data that the client needs in the single request, and we get the single JSON response. In the GraphQL, we have the different methods. In case of the REST API, we use the get method, but in case of the GraphQL, we use the query method to query the data. And we also have the another method which is called the mutation, to mutate the data which is present on the server, which is similar to the batch, post, put, delete method which we use in the REST API. So currently we have talked about the latency, how it is reducing the latency. We are trying to bring the business logic from the server to the client and giving the flexibility to the client. It would have all the freedom to request the data what it needs. So we are trying to client driven architecture rather than doing the servant driven architecture. One question come into our mind is that whether it is doing any server optimization or it is just a client optimization. automation technique. So GraphQL backend is very much similar to the REST API backend. We also can make use of the Apollo client, which is very helpful for developing the GraphQL backend. So one more important purpose that GraphQL server serves is that suppose we have the REST API server and we have the single API is being designed for all the clients, and we have the three different clients. Consider one is the Android client, second is the iOS client, third is the web client. Android client needs the two fields and iOS client says that hey, I need the three field, and web client says hey, I have the lot of bandwidth, whatever data you have just send me along. But REST API is being designed in that way so that it could consider all the clients are same and it is going to send all the information what it has, and the client needs to filter out the information on its own what it actually needs. But in case of the GraphQL, we could actually request data. If Android client needs two fields, then the server is going to send only the two fields. If the iOS client needs the three fields, then it is going to send us the three fields. And similarly in case of the web client. So server always don't need to send the full information to all the clients. It is basically driven by the request of the client, what the client actually needs. One more important thing about the GraphQL is that it does not require any specific framework to implement that. It can work in any of the application, either the Node.js application, iOS or Android. It can work in any application because it is just a query language to query the data, and it does not require any rework for the REST API part. It is used to work on the top of the REST API. So last question that we have is that it is always the case that we can say that the GraphQL works always better than the REST API or not. Actually it depends upon case to case basis. Whenever we have the fixed architecture, that we have the fixed API, the request and the response parameters that the client is going to receive, then in that case we could say that the REST API will work well. But whenever we can say that we could have the frequent changes in the API in terms of the request that could be made by the client. Sometimes client requires some of the parameters, sometimes more. It is not been decided. So in that case, GraphQL works better. So let's end this video. I've discussed a lot more information about the GraphQL. If you need any other information regarding the GraphQL, and if you have any other doubt, please let me know in the comment section. I will try to make another video. So till then, bye bye.